Bright colors and open air greets us. It's a very nice refresher after venturing through underground tombs and temples. However, completionists used to find this level to be hell. Enemies that fell off the edges of the islands don't die from the fall, leaving the player to pixel hunt them in the abyss. It's especially bad with the frogs that hop off the edge with no care in the world, and their small hitbox makes it difficult to find them with the crosshair. Revolution fixed this problem except for this one spot that I found at the Ring waterfall. There could be more edge cases, but I'm not getting paid to playtest. The first part of this level is separated into little island arenas where the previous bridge disappears except for the last one. Enemies aren't limited to the island that you're on, as they can spawn on any upcoming islands such as reptiloids or harpies swooping down from the sky. What's interesting is how each island is shaped. They're more like domes where the inclines can block your view, allowing for kamikazes or clear to close the gap, or for projectiles like the reptiloid's balls or a bomber's bomb to catch you by surprise. It's best to avoid being near the edge for that reason, as well as it leaving yourself less room to maneuver. However, their dome shape does help the player know if they're near the edge without having to take their eyes off the enemies by noticing the change in elevation. The first two arenas are rather similar, with Gunnar, Headless, Reptiloids. They're mainly a variety of enemies. The third has clear and kamikazes, which may sound daunting, but as long as you can strafe and prioritize the kamikazes, you'll leave the clear plunging off the edge. The fourth island, however, is a bit of a pain. Your focus is torn for attention between three types of enemies: a Reptiloid, a few invisible Gunnar, and a lot of Harpies. Those are three separate attacks that are hard to see all at once, since the Reptiloid's balls will keep harassing and curving around, the Gunnar body block movement and bullets while being hard to see, and the Harpies behave like a liquid where they'll move around somewhat like a unit, but everything is swish-swashing all over the place. The Reptiloid and Gunnar can be taken out swiftly enough before the Harpies can attack. It's just that the Harpies kick so hard and move so irregularly that it's preferable not to let them get so close, which the time taken to kill the Reptiloid and Gunnar allows for. Scythian witch harpies, despite that they can fly, are not dangerous at distance. Their projectiles are nothing special as they're easily dodged. However, they hurt deceptively hard with their flying kicks, the same amount of damage as a Clear's pounce. Similarly to Clear, they become harder to manage as they swarm around you. The difference is how a Harpy's kick is a bit more difficult to dodge while strafing. They seem to get a speed boost when they kick. They also slide around before they kick, similarly to the sliding Clear and Whirlpool problem in the HD versions, so the Harpies do not need momentum to attack, unlike a classic Clear's pounce. It's not that bad when it's just one, but there's never just one of them. Hinted by the Tommy gun being available to pick up here, it's effective against Harpies with each stun-locking bullet keeping them at bay. The Tommy gun also has pinpoint accuracy, making it excellent at long range. Harpies add another axis to the combat, but you can damage them to force them to land. It does make them easier to manage without their flight, but you might as well kill them to get rid of them rather than having them join forces with the rest of the enemies on the ground. They spawn at a distance and tend to group up by the time they get in range for a well-placed grenade. Rockets work too, yet the grenade launcher provides a higher amount of splash damage. In terms of their origins, they're clones of an extinct Scythian race which are not related to the Scythian people on Earth, if that wasn't obvious. There isn't an explicit planet or star system where they come from. The next two islands aren't all that interesting. Still, there is a secret on the second to last arena where you can jump through the waterfall to skip some fights. It's easily done with rocket jumping, but it is very difficult to do with a regular jump. However, there is an easier way to get the secret without having to jump. If you go the usual way and fight through the Gunnar, stick to the left when exiting the tunnel to skip the trigger that spawns the major biomechnoid. The secret will still trigger and you'll be able to skip that awful encounter. So let's take a look at how awful it is. The trigger spawns two Clear behind you and a major and another Clear in front. Obviously there's no room to maneuver, and if you're thinking that you could just run back into the tunnel, well, there's a whole stampede of Clear that spawn in there too. To say the least, it's not very forgiving. To even have a chance, you'll need to pre-fire some rockets to take out the Major as soon as possible, and then hope that you can clear out the 3 of them fast enough to spam rockets at the tunnel for the coming stampede. I recommend skipping the fight, if it even has to be said, unless you want to try your hand at the challenge. Crow Team isn't finished with their trickery yet, as the next area features another certified Crow Team classic of picking up an armor shard and spawning a Major right behind the player on top of the ridge. It's made even more devious with how all of the other spawns were within the ring of grass and never on the outer ring of trees, and the health pill near the shard is safe. These things are such a gamble that it's almost enticing to pick them up and see how screwed over you get. I have no doubt that the developers were having fun with this, as there's a secret cave before entering the next area of the level. There are plenty of resources to pick up, while a lone health pill sits separated from the supplies in a pitch black room. It just oozes something sinister, to which it does. Afterwards, we meet the fish again before another fight with the big Highlander Reptiloid. Despite it being easy like the previous one, there is a secret to skip it before finishing the level. I'm not sure why this level is called Moon Mountains. There probably isn't one besides to make it sound mythical. Evidence shows that Moon Mountains was repurposed from Serious Sam's early build, the level in particular being the water plant's first level. However, that didn't have any references to the moon either. Still, the level helps with the pacing by giving a break away from the typical Egypt setting with more lush colors and arena-based fights. Those who missed out on the secret will get a tiny taste of vegetation in the beginning of the next level. Oasis starts a trend of beginning the level in combat, which will continue until the Alley of the Sphinxes, 5 levels away. This one at least has the decency to throw the player into water for cover, and like Sand Canyon and Valley of the Kings, you'll be spending relatively little time in what the level is named after. Funny enough, the Oasis part is rather uneventful in terms of discussion, but major biomechanoids are becoming more common, so it's about time we talked about them. Major biomechanoids have the same backstory as the miners of being biologically grown and programmed. Contrary to miners, majors are extremely dangerous yet manageable. Their rockets deal 100 damage in a direct hit or up to 50 in its blast radius. Being unable to avoid it or not seeing one coming your way may mean instant death. Also, be aware of their martyrdom perk where they shoot one last rocket from the grave, which is usually angled downwards, making it more of a concern in enclosed and close quarters areas. What makes them manageable is how they fire in a pattern. The first rocket comes out of their right and the second comes out of their left, which you can exploit by shooting their rockets as soon as they appear. With Crow Team's upcoming trickery, this pattern is useful to know. Otherwise, shooting the rockets in air or strafing are adequate methods in avoiding their damage. Because the rockets take time to travel, this makes the direction that you came from dangerous and requires caution when backtracking your movements. They also require caution when your back is literally against the wall, or else the rocket will have an easier time dealing splash damage to you. It's best to have space between you and the wall anyway for maneuverability. On the other hand, the rockets can be used in your favor since any melee enemies following you may get killed by a major's rocket. Like in the minor biomechanoids Natriska entry, majors attack without thinking so you can turn their lethality against their comrades. Entering the unnamed temple, we can see the grenade launcher. Unfortunately, it is another Crow Team specialty. Major biomechanoids will be the main feature of a lot of these going forward. But wait, there's more! Ordering this grenade launcher right now comes with a stampede of clear, absolutely free. While it's unfair at first from not knowing this would happen, it is possible to survive without any damage before the clear come. The door behind you locks shut, by the way, if you thought that was an option. If needed, you can cheese them by jumping on the ledge with the statue. The shotguns are too slow for how many clear pour in, and you only get 5 ammo for the grenade launcher, so your best bet is either the Tommy gun if you have the ammo, or the rocket launcher. Despite being rigged with a major biomechanoid when you pick it up, the grenade launcher is better suited for the clear that come afterwards. Its faster fire rate and more splash damage than the rocket launcher can handle crowds with much more ease. It also has a faster projectile speed than the rocket when charged. However, you will need to account for the grenade's arc, which may take precious time away when clear are rushing you. With that in mind, the grenade launcher tends to be better for short-ranged attacks and for crowds, while the rocket launcher tends to be better for long-range attacks because of its straight projectile path, allowing for the player to fire and forget, along with no charge time for the rockets. The one exception at long range which the grenade launcher is better suited for are harpies for the extra splash damage. The arc of the grenade isn't that much of an issue too because it won't travel the entire length of its parabola. Given that the harpies are in the air, they will get hit by the grenade at around or before the arc's vertex or halfway point, so you don't need to account for the grenade's downward trajectory. Another benefit that the grenade launcher has over the rocket launcher is how the grenades don't explode on surfaces, but instead on a timer or with contact with the enemy. That allows the player to bank shots off of walls while in the safety of cover, or to lay a bunch of them down for an immediate incoming enemy or wave. After that tough fight, Crow Team's cheekiness doesn't end here as there are 2 health pills and a health vial to bring a minuscule amount of relief. And oh boy, we already know how those health pills are. But from rock bottom, the only way is up. The left pill is a fun joke of a bunch of fake spawner sound effects. A nice, playful joke. The right pill is the real funny one that will give you giggle incontinence. Just wait until you get a load of this. Of course, the way with the health pack has a clear around the corner, and picking it up has clear waiting for you back at the entrance with frogs and Gnar hot on your tail. I hope that it's obvious by now that Crow Team has shifted into serious mode and established trust issues within the player on what is safe to pick up. All of this is doable, and it's a challenge that gets easier the more you learn and adapt. For example, the Major can be defeated if you use the Tommy gun and shoot slightly below its launcher arms to blow up the rockets before they can travel. The reward for making it through all of that is the glorious secret minigun that unlocks with collecting the pills, armor shard, and destroying the statue. You won't see it again until 4 more levels, so it's recommended to get it now. Serious Sam's AI isn't all that advanced, which is a good thing. The enemies will behave in mostly predictable ways, making it easy for the player to learn their quirks. Of course, you can't predict traps, only be more wary of them. You can always quick save and pick your battles when able to. I see these traps as how well you can overcome the challenge. The game is hard at times, but it is an enjoyable difficulty, at least to me, where you can best the unfair moments. Although it can get a bit tiring when there are so many surprises close to each other. It also does suck if you got killed from one of the traps and haven't saved in a while, but hopefully by now you've learned to quick save frequently.
Let's get serious.
The second Plague of Egypt boss fight shows Serious Sam's challenge pretty well. It may take a couple of tries to beat it as you learn how to best approach it. One way is the corner camp method, in which it is possible to survive without getting hit, as long as you can manage getting the ammo safely. There is video proof of it too by a user called Garrett-chan. Another way is to herd the frogs around the room while keeping the herd as thin as possible. Of course, you can cheese this room with a rocket jump, but I don't find that fun. The item pickup spawning more frogs is once again cheeky but doable, as the minigun will chew right through them. The same goes for the scorpion that spawns with the secret within this room. It's still possible with the Thompson gun, but you probably won't fare as well. Crow Team has one last choke for this level, with a Matryoshka doll of enemies that goes up in lethality and ends with a bunch more frogs. A cute jest, but I'm ready for this level to be over. It is a difficult one with the major biomechanoids spawning in your face, so much clear and close quarters, and the frog room. Oasis could be a very short level, yet it's so dense with tough enemies that it takes a bit longer to beat. It's a definite pacing issue where all of these hard fights could have been spread out over a longer level, or Crow Team could have been more selective in which ones made it into the game. With the water element retrieved, all 4 of the elements are ours. The goal now is Memphis, where Natriska vaguely suggests that we'll find answers to our questions there. The questions were never stated before nor mentioned in any capacity. Only when we have entered the downtown part of Memphis does she say that we should look in the Temple of Ptah for a sacred item stolen during the pillage of Thebes. Not even she knows what the item will be good for, and it really feels like she's making things up as she goes. Anyway, we're in for a treat of a level after making it through Oasis. I believe Dunes shows what makes Serious Sam special, and why it's such a beloved level. It's a wide open area, bright colors, great music, large number of enemies, and plenty of ammo. Besides the music and ammo parts, these are all things that went against the typical first-person shooter at the time, and still does today. Don't just take my word for it. Crow Team's whole goal was to make a FPS like this, as shown in one of their Old Man Murray interviews.
To support a huge number of enemies, because that was our goal. To have the game that is like open, wide spaces, something very special and new. Games at that time actually had something like few enemies actually on the screen, and probably max up to 10, but we aimed for 10 times more. Actually, we aimed to reach 100 enemies at the screen at once.
It also shows Serious Sam's strengths, and not just what sets it apart from other games. Take the first kamikaze wave as an example. They don't all come from one side, but instead spread out around the player while running at different intervals. The player then has to figure out which kamikaze to prioritize first through sight and sound. Sound acts as a way to have eyes on the back of your head. I really like this reliance on sound as it makes a 3D environment feel like it's in 3D instead of everything taking place in your line of sight. This is also part of the reason why you never see me use the third-person perspective in this game. I like creating a mental map of where the enemies are through sight, sound, and knowing how the enemies behave. I can't think of any other series that offers that experience. Miscalculating who to prioritize or making a mistake can lead to a bit of damage if mitigated quickly, or a hefty punishment if not. Zone of control is also important, as you can clear out one section to not have your focus split across all directions, or to at least create more distance before they start spawning behind you again. It's like a push and pull between the player and the enemy for control over space. This shows how Serious Sam is much more of a crowd management game than a power fantasy, which I have yet to see any other game do as well as Serious Sam. And this was just for a kamikaze wave. Mental's forces synergize as a horde, where each type of enemy can complicate things. For example, clear, wearables, and kamikazes put pressure on the player. Biomechanoids and lava golems provide damage and limit the player's movement. Harpies add a new dimension to worry about. Headless and Gnar are fodder that pester the player by getting in the way of movement or attacks. Arachnoids demand immediate attention due to their hit scan bullets, and reptiloids harass the player at a distance. Each enemy brings something that demands or diverts the player's attention to eventually overwhelm them if they make too many mistakes or can't manage the crowd. We'll see some of it in the next waves of enemies, in particular the pressure exerted by the rushing enemies and the damage of the major biomechanoids. Over the hills, there's a nice view of Memphis and its many eyes of horse and Ra. Despite Dune's flatness, this sight over the hill is quite nice, and the relative bareness of the desert helps the city stand out. It captures that "we finally made it" view. It is also helped by seeing some of the structures peek out before the hill until you actually see how vast the city is. The wave after taking the supplies isn't anything special yet. Clear and wearables spawn to the left, right, and behind the player. You could stay in the same spot or move towards the gate, but you'll get pincered. Instead, you can clear a path through one side and position yourself where all 3 groups of spawns are now coming from one direction. The next wave is a bit easier despite the major biomechanoid joining the fight. You can ignore the major since there's plenty of room to move. You can use its rockets to hurt the enemies rushing at you if you want to. There's also enough time to take it out before the werewolves and kamikazes start putting on the pressure if you want to play it safer. There won't be enough time to get both of the majors since they'll be blasting off again due to their staggered spawn rate, but dealing with one is still easier than two. It's the same deal with spawns on the three sides, so you can get pincered here as well. You could push through any side, but the one back over the hill is the best path since it provides cover from the majors and creates a choke point for everything else. The same goes for any of the other waves in this area. Heading too far to the left or right may trigger the other enemy spawns and catch you by surprise. You also get a nice sight of a bunch of kamikazes running around like headless chickens if you fight behind the hill. It's a good perspective of how many enemies are thrown at the player because it's a bit hard to notice how many there actually are when you're gunning them down as they come. It really shows how Serious Sam brought something new to the market with more enemies in one fight than you would see in an entire level of other shooters. It's also quite the feat that their in-house engine could support this in the early 2000s. The third fight brings the clear back in along with a bunch more major biomechanoids. We'll deal with it the same way as the previous ones, by getting out of there. It's possible to do the previous waves by staying near where the items spawn despite it being more difficult to do, but this wave has more to deal with. There are a lot more rockets to dodge, and that's not feasible without putting space between you and the enemy, so it's best to get into a better position, such as the previous arena for the choke point. Otherwise, one of those rockets are bound to get you while the kamikazes, werewolves, and clear place a lot of pressure, making it difficult to focus on the majors. There is one big difference between Dunes and Oasis. In this level, the player has a chance to take control of the fight with positioning and prioritizing enemies. Oasis just did not give enough room and dropped major biomechanoids right next to the player. Are the Dunes fights perfect? No, they function very similarly to each other with a lot of rushing enemies and not much else. And this third wave relies a bit too much on getting out of the arena rather than standing your ground. Furthermore, Dunes doesn't utilize the amount of space that a desert gives and feels rather constrained as a result. Yet the battles are fun, especially with the music. Trying to figure out how to survive when they spawn all around you is kind of like a puzzle based on skill. The waves before the gate opens up ends with a repeat boss fight with the Highlander,
Not again.
which there's nothing more to say. The music track of this level in particular, Dune's fight, became a motif in the series that is remixed in every mainline Serious Sam game and both Talos principal games. The Serious Sam 3 remix is my favorite, and the cover of it by Metal Fortress is very well done as well. I highly recommend giving it a listen.
Has anyone else, have any fans ever notated the music?
Yeah, I believe they have, but mostly what they're doing, they're putting the cover songs on YouTube, and I love watching them. People are very talented.
Damian Ravernatz and Undercode have always done an excellent job with the music in Serious Sam, and of course the Talos principal as well. Such opposite ends of the musical spectrum done so well, even to the point where the Serious Sam soundtrack was played by an orchestra on Croatian national TV. Maybe one day we'll see the Sirius bomb on the Croatian flag instead of the coat of arms. Each level in the first encounter has two different tracks, one that plays during peaceful moments and another when in combat. It's not the first-person shooter to have this adaptive music. Deus Ex and Blood have it too, but it is still used well. The peace tracks tend to be simple and ambient, while the battle tracks are more complex and fast-paced. The battle tracks build upon their peaceful companion by upping the tempo and adding in more instruments to make the transition smoother.
Glazba u Sirius Sam serijalu oduvijek se temeljila na ritmu. Ritam je bio osnova svega. U jednom trenu, sjećam se, došli smo sa idejom da napravimo kompletan audio track baziran samo na perkusijama, ritmovima sa minimalno melodija. Za Sirius Sam osmislili smo vrstu promjene glazbe koja prati intenzitet akcije na ekranu. Znači, kada se ništa ne dešava, svira jedna relaksirajuća ambijentalna muzika, A čim krene borba i fajtovi, pali se jedna žešća glazba koja diže tenziju.
Sand Canyon's music demonstrates this pretty well. Most of the tracks aren't memorable and they tend to fall into the background. Still, I find it hard to call any of them bad as I never found them off-putting or out of place. They do what they need to in terms of setting the tone of the level and pace of the player's current activity, whether that's exploring or fighting. It's a consistent quality with some really good songs here and there. Before we enter the gates, there are a couple of things that I would like to mention first. The shotguns aren't very useful in Dunes, not just in how wide the level is, but also how many enemies there are. They don't have the fire rates to deal with it all. They're still good for the next few levels and whenever you're just exploring, but they're starting to go out of fashion with action ramping up. The secrets in Dunes aren't really secrets. They're more like, are you willing to walk this far to pick it up and fight whatever spawns your way? I can't say that's a way to cool down after fighting those waves discussed before, as the enemies you have to fight for the secrets aren't pushovers, so it feels more like a time waster having to walk all the way to the left and all the way to the right, then back to the gates. It's like the Hatshepsut Oasis secret, but for every single one in this level, besides 2 of them where there are 6 in total. I'm not sure how they could have made it better, considering that it is just a desert. Secret-seeking players are probably going to see if any are out there, so you might as well reward them. The werewolves could have been introduced here with the wide open area, giving plenty of room for them to run around in. If there are only a few of them present and not mixed in with a ton of other enemies, you can treat them like clear by letting them get close enough for a full blast of the double-barrel shotgun. It really makes you feel like a matador. If there are a lot of them or mixed in with a lot of other enemies, it's probably best to take them out from a distance so they don't disrupt you. Their charge can send you flying, which either could be beneficial by getting you out of a bad situation or harmful when it knocks you into other enemies. In other words, it's best not to get hit by a wereball unless you know what you're doing. It's quite fun to weave in and out of multiple wereball charges without getting hit too. There is a weird hitbox thing that you can take advantage of where you take very little damage from the charge and still get the push from it. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I believe it's similar to how splash damage works, where the damage of the wereball's charge is based on how direct the hit was. Like if you got grazed by it, you would get the knockback along with a little damage compared to getting hit head on and taking the maximum amount of damage. It can also be used to get out of the map so that the enemies can't reach you without having to rocket jump. By the way, this is only an issue on Classic, yet hitting a wereball with a rocket or a grenade is finicky. They can hop after getting hit with one, potentially making a quick succession shot miss. Their dead bodies can also block rockets and grenades. Because of these things, a bit more care is required with wereballs on Classic Serious Sam, or else you'll waste ammo. Wereballs can't deviate from a straight line very well when they're close to the player, so you can predict their movement if they happen to get behind you. Not paying that much attention can lead to a dire situation of getting pinballed around and losing control of the crowd. It is ideal to have them all come from one direction, but things don't always go as planned, just like what Sam says.
Now that's a lot of bull.
On the Syrian wereball's origin, they do come from Sirius, but it is a bit more complex than that. They're creatures made from crossbreeding a Syrian with some sort of cattle, so either old Farmer Brown is at it with the cows again, or Mental is doing some twisted experiments. The Serious Sam wiki claims that the English longhorn bull resembles the werebull, and I agree. Werebulls also resemble a gym rat that skips out on leg day. Another explanation is that they're based on the mammoth, since the Mammut, Croatian for mammoth, is the predecessor to werebulls in the Serious Sam Alpha. Whatever breed they are from, it does bring up the question as to why they're similar to the ones found on Earth. It could be the case that Earth and Sirius evolved similarly to each other, like how the pyramids were built in Egypt and Mesoamerica. Or, hear me out for a second, given that Sirius Sam's timeline is not exactly aligned with ours, as we've seen with Ramses III's tomb already built centuries before the actual date, maybe Mental was at Earth at one point beforehand. Maybe in Sirius Sam's timeline, mammoths and the dinosaurs actually lived together, and instead of a meteor crashing down onto Earth, it was Mental's spaceship that left the crater. Mental could have been the one to kill off the dinosaurs and kept samples of the mammoth's DNA. Perhaps he keeps samples of every species he has killed. Luckily, Mental didn't kill everything, or it was one of the generals sent there instead, and negligence saved Earth's wildlife. Or to make it more neatly fit history, since there wasn't anyone to resist Mental eradicating them, Mental instead threw an asteroid at Earth, just like how he moons it at the end of 3, thinking that would be enough to kill them off. They could have taken samples of DNA when scouting the planet before throwing the asteroid too. Why Mental would crossbreed a Syrian with a bull, I have no idea. He does seem to have a weird obsession with biological experimentation, which is contrary to its desire to kill off intelligent life. It would be nice to see Mental's nuances, or maybe he's just mental. Entering the gate to Memphis yields the laser gun, a very nice addition to the arsenal. It deals double the damage of the Tommy gun but has less max ammo. The lasers also have to travel, making it not as useful as the Tommy gun at long range, whose bullets reach their target as soon as it's fired. Even if the enemy at long range is stationary like a reptiloid, I would still use the Tommy gun over the laser gun, since you wouldn't need to lead your shots to hit their projectiles and potentially miss and waste ammo. The laser gun is better suited for tankier enemies, but in a pinch against a large number of clear who are too close to use explosives on, the laser gun is a good choice to use. Given the slow weapon switching speed, the laser gun is a good option to have out when dealing with tanky enemies that are accompanied by a bunch of fodder. It's a nice premium all-rounder weapon to use at a short to medium range. Premium meaning double the damage for an automatic weapon, but sometimes ammo for it might be sparse. The supplies given within the plaza are generous for the difficult fight soon. Once again, the major biomechanoid spawn heavily suggests getting out of the middle of the plaza. You may be cut off from any supplies, but it's better than getting rocketed and rushed by clear. It then becomes a manageable fight where you can take out the clear and pick your fights with everything else that spawns by using the cover to block their line of sight. Before moving on from Dunes, I would like to say that this level stands out in part by where it's placed. It's at the right place at the right time, coming off of levels that were relatively more enclosed, and especially after Oasis's close quarters and cheeky combat. We haven't had a large fight of this scale yet either. The closest was the Frog Room, but that consisted of one enemy and was more of a fight of attrition. Besides the amount of walking needed for all of the secrets, Dunes is a great level. Next up, we're heading into the hood.